Assalamu alaikum, ma'am. I am Vasik Shazad, and as you know already, me and my fellows here, we're doing essentially a global perspective project. It's for Cambridge examination, international examinations. So me, along with my fellows, are doing a project on It's called Caregivers for Thalassemia. We
Okay.
essentially try to focus on the caregivers instead of the actual thalassemia patients, as in what effect does caring for somebody with major thalassemia major have on them, because obviously most of them are less than 17, 16. They die pretty early, so most of the caregivers are parents themselves. So we chose to pursue this project because, one, we live in Pakistan where thalassemia is on rise, and it's in our roots for a pretty long time.
Hmm. Okay.
So here I have some of my fellows here. Firstly, Subhan Bilal here, the other person with the camera on. I have Asad Makbul. He can talk right now because of some technical difficulties, and my other friend Abdul Ahad. He
Okay.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam, everyone. क्या हाल है?
so fine.
Alhamdulillah.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so let's just start with the questions. My number one question is, in general, what's the prevalence rate of thalassemia in the US? Because I know it's not exactly a major hotspot, which is normally Central East Asia plus China and Northern Africa. So how does thalassemia end up in the US?
Right. So, as you rightly said, that thalassemia is not a disease of Caucasians, per se. But the immigration patterns have influenced rising numbers of thalassemia in the US as well. So thalassemia essentially, can be divided into two different kinds: alpha thalassemia and beta thalassemia, and both of them kind of originate in different regions of different
World.
regions globally. But alpha thalassemia coming in from Southeast Asia, Africa, beta thalassemia essentially more so originating from those two countries, as well as the Mediterranean region as well. So of course, the immigration patterns towards the US have impacted the increasing numbers.
Here, is there any currently free screening tests available, or just blood tests in general to just check thalassemia, or are they free?
So the US kind of follows a different kind of healthcare mechanism where most of the people are insured. Having said that, every child who is born in the US, every single child who's born in the US has a newborn screen, which tests for some hereditary, genetic, and metabolic disorders. Okay. So there's, I don't really exactly know the number of diseases that they screen for, but it's upwards of 10 to 15 diseases, which can be, potentially life-threatening and can have an impact in the early
Developmental
childhood
stages.
if not taken care of, right? And therefore they screen for those things. So it's just a simple test where they get a little bit of sample from the newborn heel and run for those tests. And alpha and beta thalassemia are one of them.
So what are the treatment options for major in the US?
So Subhan, in terms of the treatment options, it can kind of be divided into supportive management and curative options, right? Much like Pakistan's supportive treatment options include management of anemia. It is a disease where there is element of ineffective erythropoiesis. What that means is that the red blood cells are not being formed appropriately, and the abnormal hemoglobin chains, or the abnormal ratio of the hemoglobin chains, allows for some abnormal hemoglobin to precipitate in the RBCs and kind of leads to RBC destruction essentially. So there's an element of anemia, that is decreased hemoglobin, and there's an element of anemia. What we really do require is, a lot of these patients are transfusion dependent, as you guys may already know, right? Some of them relatively non-severe forms are also non-transfusion dependent, so we have to keep that in mind. What happens when there is RBC destruction and there is ineffective erythropoiesis is that the other organs in the body, like the spleen and the bones, try a little bit harder to produce more and more RBCs. It's like a compensatory mechanism that they try to kind of do. And what really essentially happens is that's why a lot of thalassemia kids are going to have bossing of their foreheads and, going to start have skeletal abnormalities. So essentially, the transfusion is not only to take care of the anemia, but it's also to maybe kind of, decrease the skeletal and the cosmetic abnormalities that may develop in patients with thalassemia. So there is an element of this, transfusions on a scheduled basis to take care not only of the anemia, but also to take care of the extra.
One last question I have, to your knowledge, are there any support groups or government funded initiatives to support generally patients or the caregivers? Because I know healthcare in the US specifically is quite expensive and it's become kind of a joke in recent years.
So again, I think understanding the healthcare in the US is a different ballgame altogether as well. People who are insured don't get the same kind of cost to their pocket. But of course it's also not it's not something like Canada or one of the United Kingdom, one of the European countries where it's completely free of cost either. But there is a mechanism of having health insurance where most patients do not get a high cost to their pocket if they have chronic diseases. So that's one. The second thing is that in terms of caregiver support, I was actually going through it myself as well, and there is some thalassemia support foundations in the US. And I think the kind of thought process or the central idea is to provide support to the patients, but then also mostly to the caregivers and the loved ones. And I think a lot of these organizations or these nonprofit support groups are really patient initiatives.